Hello buddies, San here, engineer, MBA, and investor. In today's video, I want to talk about this article here that we're looking at. A new kind of genome editing is here to fine-tune DNA. Instead of deleting genes, epigenetic editing modulates their activity. A new paper tests if it's able to undo a genetic effect of early alcohol exposure. So this article was published literally today, and that is on Wired. So obviously Wired, most of you know this website, wired.com. They publish a bunch of news from tech news all the way to a little bit of culture and political news. But in this case here, we're looking at science. So I thought, why not make a video on this, right? So article starts with a big picture here with like a button that you can sort of, modulate. So that's pretty cool, but clearly has nothing to do with what we're trying to achieve here. But that's, I guess, part of articles, right? They always like putting these random images, sort of giving you an idea of what they mean, right? So modulating means a button, I guess, a switch. But anyways, here they're going over this article. And I thought this was really a really good article because they're going with the study, obviously going as CRISPR showing promises, obviously through various programs such as sickle cell disease or beta thalassemia. From Hexacell, the new program was name of CTX001, formerly known as, from CRISPR Therapeutics and Vertex. And they're going over a little bit of the history here of CRISPR, but then, they're talking about how in some instances, it might be better to leave a gene intact and fine-tune it instead. Enter epigenetic editing. Right, so actually they go over what epigenetics actually mean, and basically what it is person behavior either through diet or smoking. Over time, you can sort of change the DNA of the structure of your DNA over time, right? So the same code that you were, born with, over time because of environmental factors that can change, right? And that's what they're sort of explaining here, and basically giving how identical twins, one could have a cancer because they developed habits over time that were harmful to the body, and thus had epigenetics basically that where they were able to that person unfortunately had its DNA over time for a specific genetics edited over time naturally through these bad habits they sort of had, right? So that's what they're talking about here. That's what we're talking about when we talk about epigenetics, right? But specifically with what we're talking about, this article, what they did in this study here published in the Science Advances, what they did, let's take a look at what they did. So in previous research, scientists had found that a binge drinking during adolescence alters brain chemistry, right? So in both rodents and in people, they found that exposure to alcohol in early life seems to decrease the expression of a gene called ARC. This gene is a regulator of plasticity or brain's ability to adapt based on experience. When ARC expression is turned down, the change associated with predisposition to anxiety and alcohol use disorder in adulthood. So basically, when you turn down this expression of this gene, you sort of have, a change is associated. So there is a change with anxiety and alcohol. So there is a relationship there, right? So this new study, which is what this article is talking about, which is in University of Illinois, Chicago, in the Center for Alcohol Research in Epigenetics, they want to see if they could reverse this change in rats specifically, right? What they did is they built a modified CRISPR, and instead of editing or deleting the specific gene in question, they turned it up its expression. So what they did here, I believe that I think they explained it. So they inject something in the brain of adult rats that have been exposed to alcohol during their adolescence. So basically, you have a bunch of rats there that were sort of exposed to alcohol in their teen years, and then in the equivalent ages of 10 and 18 for a human. So basically, that's in rat years, but whatever. The early exposure meant that ARC expression was already depressed in the adult animals, right? So the CRISPR injection brought ARC expression back up to the base levels. So what they were able to do is sort of like a factory reset the brain, right? So after that change, these rodents consumed less alcohol and were less anxious. And this was, of course, done through several tests and several analysis. That's how they were able to come up with this discussion about the result they were able to extract, right? The more stressed the rodents are, the less time they like to spend in open air parts of the maze. And obviously, they were talking about how they were, able to show they were less stressed, right? We didn't see any indication of the drinking coming back to baseline. Means maybe this epigenetic edit will produce a long-lasting effect. I think a lot more work is needed here in terms of how this can be translated into humans or a therapy, but I have high hopes. Okay, so this, let's see here. They also designed a CRISPR injection to decrease its expression. And look at this. Lo and behold, following the injection, the rats had more anxiety and consumed more alcohol than they did before. Is that even legal? I don't even know that's legal. If you know it's gonna... yeah, I don't know about that. Seems like a waste. You already know that this gene is responsible for it, and if you bring it back to the base level, it's gonna turn their consumption away and addiction away from alcohol, and now you're reversing that just to prove your point. That's weird. I guess if it's legal, right? Oh, Dr. Urinov's name's coming back up here. I'm struck deeply by this work showing the feasibility of changing a gene memory of its experience. Okay. Rats are inhuman, and we shouldn't leap to conclusion. The distance between curing a rat and injecting a human being with addiction to alcohol with an epigenetic editor is a formidable one, Dr. Urinov says. I think we are quite ways away from somebody who has developed a mild drinking problem becoming eligible for a quick injection into their amygdala. Yeah, so I think this is basically Dr. Urinov saying, look, this is on rats. It's way too early to say anything here. We would need a lot more time, a lot more research, a lot more data to even come up to a point where we can sort of inject something similar to a human that has addiction to alcohol, right? So clearly here, this type of study is sort of, giving you more information as to how we can address the addiction to alcohol and to other potential drugs by basically, instead of editing a specific gene that is directly responsible to that, you sort of, factory reset the brain so you sort of get your base levels back to normals, and then that alone has intended consequences to basically allow you to move away from this addiction. So it's sort of like reverse engineering things, right? Which I think I like the way they're doing it. Okay. I don't know if there's anything similar out there that sort of does that. I don't think there is anything with CRISPR for sure, but I don't know if there's anything out there that you can sort of edit or, do something in the brain or like factory reset your brain, and then that sort of brings up the thing you were deficient of, or maybe you had over the base level of, brings it back to the base level, or if you were deficient, it brings up back to the base level, and whatever that may be. Not particularly this study. I'm curious to see the comments if you guys have anything in mind there, but this is quite an interesting study, actually. I'll be honest with you guys. I think I found it really, really interesting that Wired.com would cover this type of story. It talks about CRISPR, talks about a study we using CRISPR, but more specifically, it talks about how using CRISPR not to specifically delete or edit a specific gene that you think may be responsible for alcohol use, for example, because it's so complicated, right? Alcohol use behaviors, you could be regulated through a number of genes, but instead, you use previous research that sort of indicated that if you can sort of quote-unquote reset the brain, factory reset the brain in a sense where you can bring back a specific, a chemistry in your brain back to the base level, then chances are you may actually, in this case, they were talking about the ARC, right? If the ARC expression back up to the base levels, you may end up, moving away from this addiction from alcohol, which I think it's amazing to think about, right? So I'll end this video like this. I think this is a really nice article, really, really nice study. I might read into the study and figure out how they were able to study it, like what's the end sample, what was the methods used, what were the limitations, maybe what are things that statistical significance there in their studies. But I think this is looking really, really good. Epigenetics, I think it's a hot topic out there. I think lots of university students take this course and using CRISPR there to sort of supplement that field. I think it's amazing, right? So hopefully you guys appreciate this video. Like I said, do like this video if you found value from it. Subscribe if you're not. Thank you so much for watching, and have a beautiful Monday and a beautiful week. Thank you.